Hello there. We're going to look in this video at scale. What is scale? Scale is the relationship between distances on a map or model and the distances in reality. Now, the simpler scales are ones that tell you what a unit of measurement on the map or model is and what it represents in reality. So let's say the scale is 1 centimetre represents 5 kilometres. What does a distance of 3.2 centimetres on the map represent? You times it by 5. 3.2 times 5, you'd probably be allowed to use a calculator for these type of questions. Come up in the calculator paper generally, is 16 kilometres. The units in reality are given here. And if we wanted to work the other way around, let's say we had 20 kilometres. Well, we would divide by the 5 and we would get 4. 20 divided by 5 is 4, and the units would be centimetres. So in reality your units will be kilometres, and on the map or model it's centimetres. But there's another type of scale. It's a bit harder to use. Just clear that. That's from a previous attempt at doing this video. Here the distances on the map or model and the relationship between distances and reality are given as a ratio. Now, what does 3.2 centimetres represent here? Well, 3.2 centimetres, to find out what it represents in reality, we multiply it by this number here, and you would get 160,000 centimetres as the distance it represents. We could check that with a calculator. But that's an awful lot of centimetres, and it's difficult to visualise what it is. So here is where this particular way of representing scale gets a bit trickier. We've got to convert those distances into bigger units. Now, if you divide by 100, the number of centimetres, you find the number of metres. So it would be 1600 metres. And if I divide that by 1000, I can convert that distance in metres into a distance in kilometres. So 3.2 centimetres represents 1.6 kilometres. What about the other way around? What about we know the distance in reality and want to find out what it is on the map. Let's say again it's 20 kilometres. Well, this time we would divide by 50,000. And here we have a problem because our calculator would probably say something like this. Quite off-putting. In fact, the older calculators would probably say something like this. Now, what does that represent? Well, the answer they've given you, the calculator's given you, is the answer in standard form. Now, if the display is big enough, it might just show you that it represents 0.0004. But the distances will be kilometres. Now, what's that, though, in our units for measuring smaller distances? Well, to find out what it is in centimetres, we times it first by 1000, this distance, that's a fraction of a kilometre, to find the distance in metres. Now, to multiply by 1000, remember, you just multiply, move the decimal point 1, 2, 3 points. So it's 0.4 metres. But again, we ask ourselves, what's that in centimetres? Well, if I times that by 100, I find the distance in centimetres. And the distance in centimetres would be 40 centimetres. So, when the scale is given as a ratio, you've got to remember that the units remain the same. And that creates problems when we're going from map to reality, because we'll get lots and lots of centimetres. Best to convert that into metres or kilometres. It's even more tricky when you're working backwards, because you divide by 50,000 and you're going to get a very, 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 very small fraction of a kilometre. And it's difficult to visualise what that is when it comes to small distances. So you multiply by 1000 to turn it into metres, and then by 100 to turn it into centimetres. Anyway, I hope this has been of some use to you. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'll just look at one more example using this tricky ratio. So let's just clear all this. Just bear with me. Let's look at a different scale. Let's look at 1 to 100,000. So you've measured 2.7 centimetres on the map. What's that in reality? So we do 2.7 times 100,000. Now, just bear with me. So that's 270,000. But the units, remember, will be centimetres. Now, what's that in kilometres or metres? Well, if I divide that by 100, I get the distance in metres. So it's 2,700 metres. And if I divide that by 1,000, I get the distance in kilometres. 2.7 kilometres. And the trickiest of all, because of the limitations on calculator display, is when you're trying to convert a distance in reality. Let's say it's 7.4 kilometres. What's that on your map? Well, this time remember, when you're going from reality to map, you divide by the ratio. So we divide that by 100,000. Just bear with me yet again. And you'll probably get it's 7.4 times 10 to the minus 5. Now, if you haven't studied standard form, that can be quite bewildering. It actually represents 0.00074 kilometres, a minute fraction of a kilometre. But what's that in centimetres? Well, if I times it by 1,000, I get the distance in metres. And remember how we multiply by 1,000? Just move decimal point 1, 2, 3 to the right to make the number bigger. And we get 0.074 metres. And how do I turn that into centimetres? Well, I times that by 100. This time you move decimal point 2 places to the right. And my answer is 7.4 centimetres. Wouldn't it be so much easier if the scale had been given as 1 centimetre represents 1 kilometre? But such is life. Anyway, thank you for listening.